What's up, everybody? It's Troy Cartwright. Welcome back to another episode of 10-Year Town. Before we get started, I wanted to say a quick thank you to everybody for subscribing to the YouTube channel. We hit our goal of 3,000 subs. I don't know what it means, but it's nice to hit a round number. Nothing else to promote this week. I hope everybody has a wonderful, safe, and happy 4th of July, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Today's guest is the legendary and Grammy award-winning Tammy Rogers. You know Tammy as a founding member of the Bluegrass band, the SteelDrivers. She is also an incredibly accomplished studio musician and songwriter. I really enjoyed this conversation. I learned so much about her life, how she got started, and she has a truly fascinating journey through the music business. So without further ado, here she is, Tammy Rogers.
We don't have to wear these. I'm just
I
gonna.
love these microphones.
You an SM7?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite vocal mics.
I use a lot of different expensive microphones.
Mm-hmm. And then
This
you come
one
back
always
to
works.
this, and it's like, man,
And
yeah.
you can like throw it down the stairs.
I know.
It would be fine.
Virtually indestructible.
Yeah.
I think one of my most favorite. I'm not a fan of my own voice.
Speaking or singing?
Singing, I mean, most of us are so hypercritical of that. I can tolerate it now better, but back in the day, and do you know Peter Coleman?
Mm-mm.
He's a longtime engineer around town, Petage. He came from Britain and just made masterful records.
Yeah.
Kind of came up, back in the days when everything was tube and beautiful and fat.
Like my buddy
tape.
My buddy Aaron, we good? My buddy Aaron S. Heist just did a few songs. He produces Ryan Hurd, and they just did a few songs in Abbey Road. And he said,
No fun at all, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure it was no fun. But, all the documentaries I've watched on the Beatles and stuff, they're like wearing lab coats.
Lab coats,
They're
I know,
like
I love
true
that.
engineers.
I know, yeah.
And I think that
I think we should bring that back.
I know, I think there's something to it. I don't know what, and I'm sure it's incredibly, incredibly expensive. And that's probably why a lot of those studios have, they're not like phased out, but they're even since I moved here 9 years ago, there's less of them.
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of sad.
Well, and I, not giving away my age.
Yeah.
But, I'm actually so thankful that when I first started doing sessions here, they were still on tape.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Dang. Yeah, and you would have to wait.
Yeah.
For the rewind.
How long did it take?
Oh, not crazy long, but it was so funny because it gave you a minute to kind of collect your thoughts and know,
Right.
okay, yeah, I asked to be punched in here. Okay, this is what I need to do.
And you could still punch a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you could punch. It wasn't, but man, the guys that were really great at it, because you were going in on a take, and lots of times, I missed it. Okay, we're going to have to back up another bar, so.
Interesting. Yeah, so was it all, I should know this, but I don't. When you record to tape, is it gridded in some kind of way that you can visualize it, or it's all just they just know where it's at?
Yep.
And so somebody's done it enough times where they know.
Oh yeah, they know the timing of it and all that stuff. And I never had to do this because I'm not an engineer, but the guys that I saw them do it.
Yeah.
Literally took a razor blade to splice.
Yeah, that's what I always think of.
That's nerves of steel right there, because if you mess up, you've just screwed two takes.
Yeah, and then they would
splicing.
I guess you had to
Yeah.
cut it and then
Cut it
tape
and
it.
tape it. Yeah. Yeah.
What a skill.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. I mean, I've grown, obviously, many years later, accustomed to the speed of, okay, I'm ready. Okay, you ready? Just no time between, no recovery time. But I remember when we all started making that transition, in the studio, it was like, what? It's like, you just.
Because it was just getting faster and
so
faster
fast,
and fast.
so fast.
And did it make it better? Nobody knows.
I don't know.
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I think I was watching some guy on YouTube. I don't know what his qualifications were.
You don't really have to have any on YouTube, do
I know,
you?
you don't. Or to have a podcast, apparently. But he was talking about that thing where you would. There was a couple things going on. The tape would have to rewind, so everyone reset. But also, I can think of stuff I've done recently where me and the producer / engineer, if I'm trying to get this guitar take, we might just loop it.
Oh, yeah.
30, 40 times.
And just till it's just like, yeah.
And I don't even know if half the time the second one was right.
Right, yeah.
There's no scarcity, so you just keep.
Right.
Right.
It's not like, oh my gosh, this tape is $150 a roll.
Yeah.
And.
Totally.
Yeah, all that. So, but like I said, I'm glad I lived through that and have all that experience.
Such a rich experience.
Yeah, because it does inform, again, my understanding of a lot of history and a lot of great recordings.
Well, thank you so much for being here, first of all.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
this is going to be fun. I can already tell.
Oh, yeah.
We're jamming.
Let's take a quick break here to tell you about our friends, the Graphic Guitar Guys. If you've ever thought about having a custom guitar, whether for merch, a giveaway, or a unique VIP package item, Graphic Guitar Guys makes it simple. They've worked with some of the biggest names in country music, handling everything from the guitar to full color graphics and shipping, and it's all for one easy price. They're also a great option for album pre-sale bundles or fan collectibles. I've worked with Scott and the rest of the team myself, and they really do make the whole process effortless. Check them out at thegraphicguitarguys.com. Now, back to the show.
I've really been kind of digging deep, and so I'm excited about today's interview.
Okay.
And to talk to you. And I wanted to kind of start. I feel like I have a decent understanding of the history of the band, but can you kind of give me a little background on like what you were doing before that and how you got to Nashville?
Sure.
And
where
are you from originally?
Well, born in East Tennessee.
Okay.
Up in the mountains. So both sides of my family, long-time Appalachian families.
Okay.
But my dad moved us out to the Dallas-Fort Worth area when I was 5.
Oh, really? It's where I'm from.
Really?
Yeah, from Dallas.
Irving.
Okay.
First suburb west there. Yep.
Yep.
Well, it's not a well-known fact, but I went to SMU for a couple
Really?
years. Yep.
Wow.
Yep, on a classical.
The ponies.
Should I tell this?
Yeah.
Classical violin scholarship.
Hey. Is that okay? Is that like a
when I first moved to town, that was
sacrilege?
Very taboo. If you could read legit and because people that played all the commercial fiddle, bluegrass and country, that was like, ooh, then you can't possibly be legit if you're a read, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I kind of kept that on the down low for a really long time. But yeah, interestingly enough, my parents were self-taught musicians.
Okay.
Never fully professional, but my first memories are hearing them sing, Porter and Dolly, duets,
so cool.
that kind of stuff. And so we always had instruments around the house, played some piano, played a little bit of mandolin when I was little. And then out in Texas, there was a great orchestral program in the public schools at that time.
Really?
I hope it's still going because at this point in time, I started playing in 5th grade.
Yeah.
It's free. part of, it was after school program.
And they had the instruments, or you rented
I
them?
went and rented, my
Yeah.
folks rented a violin for me. And then by the time I got into 6th grade and junior high, that's the way it was set up then. I don't know if it's still that way out there. We had orchestra every day.
Wow.
In school.
Yeah.
So it was amazing to have that as part of my education. But then at home, my dad knew enough to teach me my first fiddle tunes.
Yeah.
So, and then he would back me up on guitar. So it was kind of the best of both worlds because I was learning by ear at home.
Right.
And he was playing behind me. So I got this whole rhythmic sense and this whole harmonic sense.
Yeah.
Without even somebody explaining. I was just already hearing it.
You start to like intuit.
Chord progressions.
Yeah.
Things that never had to be explained to me because
Yeah, you were just immersed in it.
I just heard it and knew it, So played both all the way through school.
Yeah.
Junior high, my dad, started a little family bluegrass band,
Yeah.
which is so common in bluegrass.
So wholesome.
Yeah.
You
And, at that time, there was a huge bluegrass scene in kind of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, that area. And there were a bunch of people. I was kind of on the younger edge, but a bunch of us going to the same festivals, jamming all night long.
Yeah.
That a bunch of us wound up migrating this way after we all, got out of school, and almost all of us became professional musicians.
Really?
So I look back on that and it's like, what an amazing time period that I was just happened to be in and around, and to grow up with these players that, Scott Vestal, who went on to play with Sam Bush for many years.
Yeah.
He won the Steve Martin Banjo Prize a number of years ago,
Okay.
just top of the top. Greg and Brad Davis, Billy Joe Foster that moved to town and played with Ricky Skaggs and played with Bill Monroe, and Craig Fletcher and Richard Bailey, who then many, many, many years I reconnected with in the SteelDrivers. So, it was just an amazing time period. And it's great to cross paths with all those folks nowadays too.
Yeah, that's so amazing.
So long story short, that I went to SMU for 2 years, and then I decided that wasn't quite the scene for me.
Yeah. Just the classical scene or the SMU vibe?
Both.
Or yeah. I could see it's SMU is like a
It's
I
kind
don't
of
know,
like the
it's like
Vanderbilt of Dallas.
a specific taste profile.
Yeah.
I never aligned with like the frat lifestyle feels like diminishing to like but I just mean like it wasn't I didn't have a desire to go there, I guess.
Well, and again, I was on a full ride scholarship.
Yeah.
So my parents didn't have money,
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly you're cast in the middle of Highland Park.
Yeah.
Uber wealthy, and the children of uber wealthy parents, and it was like, wow, one of these things isn't like the other.
Yeah.
But I appreciated the opportunity, and it was a great experience for what it was.
Yeah.
And then I quickly decided that I wanted, which is interesting that I didn't go to Austin, but that I wanted to come to Nashville.
Yeah, why do you think that was?
I think it was because I always had such an affinity, such a deep-seated affinity for the mountains where I'm from,
Mm-hmm.
and that music that I connected so deeply with.
Yeah.
My older brother had come to Vanderbilt and gone through school there, so I was aware of Vanderbilt. So I wrote them a letter, and I had met this girl that had grown up in Nashville, and she told me about a small school called Belmont College at the time.
Yeah.
And I wrote them a letter, and then I also heard about MTSU,
Mm-hmm.
so I wrote them a letter. And found out that Vanderbilt, they were starting Blair again, but they were only allowing incoming freshmen, and that was not me.
Yeah.
And then I heard back from MTSU, but then I realized, oh, that's 45 minutes outside of Nashville. I don't want to be there. I want to be in Nashville. And lo and behold, the new orchestra director at Belmont got my hold of my letter, and he had gone to North Texas State.
Okay.
And had studied under my then orchestra director at SMU.
Yeah.
So he was like, please come.
Wow.
Please. We want you. Please.
That worked out.
And it was perfect.
Yeah.
Which was so funny because everybody thought I'd lost my mind. SMU was a much bigger school at the time, and Belmont was just this tiny little, very tiny liberal arts school. But they already had the commercial music department. And, I met so many great people there, and it wasn't this weird anomaly that I played other styles of music besides classical.
Yeah.
I mean, I walked out on I think it was my senior, I went ahead and finished the major in my undergraduate degrees in classical violin.
Okay.
I finished it, but I came back out and played an encore, and I came back out and played a fiddle tune.
That's so cool.
And my violin teacher thought it was cool.
Yeah.
She wasn't like, offended or anything.
Yeah.
So it
wasn't controversial.
It wasn't.
Yeah,
it wasn't. So it was a great place to be at that time.
That's really cool.
So yeah, that kind of brought me back. And then I moved back to East Tennessee for a few years. I call that my 3-year detour.
Mm-hmm.
Played up there locally, was in a very early version of a bluegrass band that everybody from that band wound up going on and, playing professionally.
Yeah.
But then I got a call to come and audition for Patty Loveless.
Wow.
And I had never thought about playing country music at that point.
Yeah.
I'd only ever done classical or bluegrass. Had never played in an electric setting, never played with a pickup, never played with the drummer. But, Patty was from East Kentucky. So I showed up, and it was kind of an acoustic audition, and we started singing together, and there was a familiarity there.
Yeah.
From as the crow flies, we were from about 100 miles apart.
Yeah.
And she hired me.
Wow.
So that was my first real gig, and so I moved back to Nashville, and I've been here ever since.
Wow.
That's all it took.
And what was that gig like?
Amazing.
Yeah.
So fun.
Yeah.
It's the most fun ever. When you're young, I was like 25 and finally able to completely support myself playing music.
Yeah.
And, not teaching part-time or, whatever else, juggling half a dozen freelance gigs.
Right.
And I was around, a bunch of other people that were as into it as I was. It was the most fun ever.
Yeah.
And Patty is still amazing, was amazing then. It was incredible. And I met so many people, traveling all over. I mean, at the time, my gosh, I think she was doing about 200 dates a year.
Wow.
And we were on the road.
Yeah.
But, my first date with her, we opened for George Strait.
Pretty awesome.
So, like that kind of thing, I look back and go, what?
Yeah. And were y'all, how big was the operation? I'm guessing y'all were all traveling.
We're on buses.
Yeah.
Yeah, by that point, she already had a couple buses.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. I was able to travel on her bus.
Okay.
I was the only girl at the time. So she really kind of took me under her wing in that way. And I know my parents were freaked out. It's like, what? You're going on the road with a bunch of men? But once they came to a show and they saw the environment that I was on her bus and, the guys treated me like a sister. It was really great for them too, to suddenly be like, oh, this isn't some, crazy, wild, drunken party.
Hedonistic.
All that thing. It wasn't that at all. It was great. And so suddenly that changed their mindset, and they got really excited and supportive and happy about all that.
Well, it's so amazing. I mean, it's cool.
Yeah. I mean,
special.
I kind of got to live out their dream, because they never got to really take it that far.
Yeah.
And I get that, I have a daughter now, so when I see her getting to do things maybe that I didn't get to do, there's nothing better than that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm here, in Nashville and doing this, chasing this dream because my parents were so supportive.
Yeah.
And my dad always wanted me, he he encouraged it.
Yeah.
You know, at every step of the way, even before I wanted to, you know, when he gave me a guitar when I was 12 or whatever. And that's, you know, it's special.
It is. It's a special bond too. You know, I always feel sorry. I know some people wind up doing it anyway, even though their parents maybe don't think it's a cool thing to do or wish they would be a doctor, lawyer, Indian chief or whatever.
Right.
You know, but when you have that support, it's like they really do give you wings.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
And then it's this shared kind of thing. And, you know, if I'd done it for a while and decided it wasn't the thing, they would have been fine with that too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I know they were very proud.
Yeah, that's so special. And so you're on the road. You said 200 dates a year. Did you, at some point, did you start kind of picking up more like studio work and all that? How did that kind of
Well, Patty
happen?
did have me in. She was working on a record that year that I was in the band. She had me come in and sing on it.
Okay.
Which was amazing.
Yeah.
But I did very quickly see that at that time in Nashville, this was early 90s, that there was a big divide between road bands and session players.
Yeah. I feel like there still is.
Somewhat.
You know?
Yeah. I think
Depends.
I think it's definitely smoothed out based on, you know, the artist that you're touring with.
Yeah.
But so I quickly saw, she asked me to sing, but I didn't get to play on the record. And growing up, you know, playing bluegrass, you played on the record.
Yeah.
Whether you were the best player or the worst player in the band, you still played on it, you know, in most cases, if it was a true band. So I very quickly determined that was a goal, that I wanted to be a session player.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, it was, I wanted to have my work documented. You know, not just, and I love to play live. I still love to play live. Always have. Never lost that. But, you know, unless somebody's recording it, you know, on some device, those devices have changed so much through the years. I don't even want to say a device, but some device. You know, that those performances only live on in people's memories, which is great.
Yeah.
To impact people that way. But, you know, when you have a recording,
it's forever.
It's forever. I mean, there's a great new book out about Billie Holiday, and I was reading it, and I started pulling up her records from the 40s.
It's cool.
You know, and it's like, they still sound amazing.
Yeah.
So that was a huge motivator for me to start. In Nashville at the time, there was so much work. You know, really by the early to mid 90s, there were about 20 major labels.
Yeah.
And so when you think about that, each label had about, 8 to 10 artists.
Right.
So roughly 200 major label artists.
Yeah. They all need records.
They all need records. They all need songs. They all need bands.
Yeah.
They all need to do recording sessions. So then you have this massive publishing world because, 200 artists cutting 10 songs each, and a lot of them did a record almost every year. That's a lot of songs getting cut every year.
Yeah.
So there were demo sessions almost around the clock in those days. And that's really where I started working my way into the session world.
Gotcha.
Was just playing demo after demo after demo. And,
yeah.
I'd go sit in with somebody at the Bluebird, and almost every time some songwriter would come, hey, do you play on demos? Like, yes, I do.
Yeah.
And, for the longest time, I'd run over and play, $20, $25 demo for somebody.
Yeah.
But it was the hours and the experience and getting the networking. And then you start getting called for 3-hour sessions, not just a single song here, a single song there. And, before I knew it, I left Patty after about 14 months, I think, because I got the opportunity to go tour with Trisha Yearwood.
Wow.
And that was amazing too.
Yeah.
In a different way, but very, very amazing. And same thing, she cut a record while I was in the band, didn't get a chance to play on that record, but I was starting to get calls to play on other people's records. So I left that gig in January of 93. And I had saved up enough money that
which is important.
I thought if I don't get a single call as a freelancer, then I can at least pay my bills.
Yeah.
For a year. I'll give myself a year. And if I haven't made it happen, then, I'll look for another gig or figure out what the next thing is. But I never looked back.
Yeah.
The phone started ringing and all sorts of fun stuff. Started going to LA a bunch.
Yeah.
Did a bunch of fun stuff out there, kind of in that early to mid 90s and recording sessions. And suddenly Nashville is so funny because I was out there working and then I come back here. Oh, you've been in LA?
Yeah.
Oh, LA. It's like, it's a town just like here. They're musicians, just,
Yeah, it's the same.
But the whole perception was, you've got to be so much hipper because you've been out there working. So
it's exotic,
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it sounds like, I don't know, to me that was like the 90s to the early 2000s. It was like the golden heyday of recording music. I mean, because it was music was making the most money, and the records were so
selling
important,
like crazy. Everybody was selling platinum.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I know. I don't know if you know Marv Green, but he was on here.
Oh yeah.
I think he was saying that
I played on plenty of Marv demos.
Okay, there you go. I think he said that like if you were on a major label and your record only went gold, it was like a flop.
Yes.
And now that would be it'd be like, oh
my gosh, yeah.
You did it.
I know.
Yeah.
It again, right place, right time because
the right wave to ride.
And my husband, I'm married to an electric guitar player, who's a few years older than me, and same thing. He at one point in the 90s literally was doing 3 sessions a day almost every day of the week.
Yeah.
So averaging 12 to 15 sessions a week.
Crazy.
I mean, just as hard as he could go.
Yeah.
I usually probably was more, fiddle being not necessarily used on every single session. I was probably more of a 6 to 10 session a week, kind of gal.
Was there things that you had to do? I always wonder about this, and we've had a few session players on here, but I don't know if I've ever asked this question. Like, do you ever worry you're going to run out of
ideas or licks?
Yeah, licks. I mean, this song's some of these songs are similar tempos, same key. In country music, there's only like 4 chords.
Right. I haven't ever let it trouble me too much.
Yeah.
And I think because I try to be in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if I'm in the moment and really paying attention to what that particular song is bringing to the table, I'll come up with something.
Yeah, you're gonna find it.
Yeah, and yeah, of course. A lot of times, I joke when I learned to saw in the chorus, I started making money. There's a lot of technical aspects that can be repeated a lot.
Sure.
Because we want the texture of this, or we want this rhythm thing. It's like, got it, great.
Yeah.
But when it comes to playing a solo or the best way, in my opinion, to come up with a hook lick for something is to refer back to the melody.
Yeah.
And if the melody, if there's a melody there that you can quote a little bit of that,
that's it.
There's your lick, And obviously you figure out how it works on your particular instrument and how the inflection works. But,
Yeah.
If that's kind of on the songwriter.
Yeah. Well,
songwriters, do your homework.
That's the job. It's why I'm always just trying to think of new melodies.
Yeah.
Well, I try and stay listening.
Mm-hmm.
The melodies find themselves, but you have to keep. The way I look at it is, you just it's a big blender, and you got to make sure you have all different stuff coming in.
And I also think I signed a publishing deal in 97 too. Okay. So I had a publishing deal, straight up Nashville publishing deal for about 8 years.
Gotcha.
Up until about 2005, I guess, or 6.
Okay.
But I also think that words have a rhythm.
Yeah.
So to me, when I come up with a lyrical phrase or a title, those words imply a meter. They imply a phrase. That directs me a lot.
Yeah. Where were you writing at the time?
The first deal was at a small independent company called Little Big Town.
Okay.
Not affiliated with the band, Little Big Town.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was an amazing time to be there. I was also, how that came about, starting in about 94 or 95, I was a part of this very, very early independent label called Dead Reckoning.
Okay.
And it was Kieran Kane, Kevin Welch, Mike Henderson, Harry Stinson, and myself.
Yeah.
We're all partners in this. We like to say we were Americana before Americana was cool.
Okay. Yeah, what was it? Was it called Americana?
No, not really.
It
was just kind of like this roots-centered singer-songwriter-based label.
Yeah.
And I mean, we all wound up going to the very first Americana conference out in San Francisco.
Yeah.
It was a big deal when, I'm trying to think of the name, the Gavin Report came out with an Americana chart.
Yeah, of course.
There hadn't been one.
Yeah.
So, it was an amazing group of creatives and songwriters to kind of be the little sister to.
Yeah.
And we all played on each other's records, and we all helped each other and toured together. And that's how we were playing at South by Southwest.
Okay.
Kind of a showcase. We could go out and play as a band, but showcase 5 different artists.
Yeah.
It was a really cool concept.
Yeah, that is cool.
So Woody Beaumont saw our set, and he came up and he goes, "Man, I really like your songs," because we'd each do 3 or 4 songs in the set.
Yeah.
And he said, "Who has your publishing?" And I said, "I do." And he goes, "Well, if you'd ever like to change that, here's my card. Give me a call." And so I looked him up when we got back into town a few weeks later and had a meeting, and it just seemed like a really great fit. Again, another small indie.
Yeah.
I was at a small indie label, small indie publisher. But as it turned out, it was a very powerful small indie.
Yeah.
They had some massive hit songwriters there, and it was a great place to be signed and to be under that umbrella and get to write with some of those folks and learn, because then it was bought by Sony.
I see.
So I was absorbed into that merger, and survived the merger. So I was at Sony for a number of years, I guess another 5 or 6 years after that.
Gotcha.
But
they all started absorbing each other.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, yeah. Because by that time, that was right around 2000, 2001 when things were starting to get gobbled up, and the business was kind of headed kind of smaller again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'd have to, I don't remember exactly when it fell off a cliff.
What a
so to speak.
term. Yeah.
But
I don't either, but I just do remember, like I said, at one point there were 20 labels, and then they started kind of oh, well, Decca's going to be absorbed back into MCA again. And, some Atlantic's going back into, RCA, all these things started kind of being
consolidating.
Consolidated. That's the word. Yeah.
So 20 years of the SteelDrivers?
Of the SteelDrivers.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah, I can't believe it. I mean, I just really, if you'd asked me, probably even 10 years ago, would I have seen 20 years, I would have said not a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I never do this, but I was so excited to talk to you today that I prepared some questions. If you wouldn't mind me asking.
Thank you. Okay.
So legend has it that you guys started SteelDrivers in 2005. allegedly almost by accident, and the goal really wasn't to have commercial success.
Yep.
But just to have fun, to make something authentic and compelling. When did you realize that it was going to become much more than that?
I think when we started playing out.
Yeah.
And the reaction, I mean, understandably. It's hard to explain because now I don't know if there's a single person, unless they're out in Mongolia somewhere, that has not heard Chris Stapleton's voice.
Right.
But if you can imagine and put yourself back into a time that you'd never heard that voice.
Yeah.
And suddenly you show up at the station inn and you're thinking, I'm just going to hop in here and have a beer and thing of popcorn, hang out. There's a band playing.
Yeah.
I'll see what they're like. And suddenly that slaps you in the face.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to understate that, you know?
Yeah.
And then you factor in these songs that
Great songs.
One right after the other.
Yeah.
You know, we very quickly decided we were going to do all original material.
Yeah.
And people didn't like it. They can snap their lawn chair and go back to their camper.
Yeah.
Because, you know, with the exception of Stapleton, we had all been playing a long, long time.
Yeah.
You know, he was the baby in the band. I think he's 13 or 14 years younger than me.
Okay.
And I'm the next baby. But, you know, we'd all been playing for a gazillion years, so I didn't really have any desire to be invested in a band that was going to do a bunch of cover songs.
And is that sort of the unwritten rule of the genre that y'all were playing, where like you did do a lot of covers? So to play originals is kind of, I mean, were people playing no originals? Or just very few?
Some bands, but, you know, I'd say most of the modern bands would be maybe 50-50.
Okay.
You know, they might rely on, you know, 50% cover songs from wherever, whether they were covering a country tune or an old Bill Monroe.
Yeah.
You know, and then maybe 50% of their own stuff.
Gotcha.
And no disrespect to any of those bands or anybody.
Of course.
That, I mean, if I'm, you know, just wanted to have some fun, yeah, I may go sit in and sing a cover song, fine. But I'm not going to do that regularly.
Yeah,
As,
totally.
You know, it's like, okay, we're going to do this band. We're going to, you know, do all these cool covers. It's like, no, I'm not interested, you know? And I know a big part of that was coming from the Reckoners, where it was all original music too, you know, and having worked with here, you know, it's such a song town.
Well, and you all had probably all these songs that were just sitting there.
Amazing songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Mike Henderson used to say. We had all these songs just sitting there going to waste.
I think that's the hardest part. I wake up sometimes 3-4 in the morning. I'm like, well, no one's ever going to hear the song. I mean, like, I got to do something about this, you know?
And I think that was a big impetus for Hendo, as we called him, you know, wanting to kind of get this thing going, you know, because he did his Monday night thing at the Bluebird, his blues thing, and he did that for 30-something years, you know. And truth be told, I think he was really hoping to do something similar, just a bluegrass version of that, you know, not at the Bluebird, but someplace else.
Yeah.
Either, you know, I don't know that he was hoping for once a week, but certainly once a month.
Yeah.
But then, you know, it very quickly became much more.
Became a thing.
Than that, yeah.
When, because y'all were all studio musicians and kind of Nashville. I mean that in a complimentary way. But did what y'all were doing feel like almost like some kind of like rebellion against the Nashville system, or was it not really that thought out?
I don't know that it was that thought out, you know. We just once we got together, you know, and again, I knew Henderson because we'd worked together in the Reckoners, and I knew Richard Bailey from growing up playing bluegrass out in Texas.
Yeah.
He's a few years older than me. But I didn't know Mike Fleming, and I didn't know Chris yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'd heard Chris's name around, you know, starting to get, you know, a little bit of a buzz in town, you know, not, it was amongst other writers and
Yeah.
you know, those types of situations. But I hadn't heard him sing yet.
Mhm.
So when we got together, and then again, you hear that voice
Yeah.
and you hear those songs, and we very quickly started doing originals because why not?
Right.
You know, they'd pull out a song. It's like, wow. I was just shocked. It was like, is that an old traditional that I've missed somehow? You know,
This is
because they
good.
were so authentic.
Yeah.
And, you know, then without even too much thought, I just started singing harmony, you know, and if you had played me his voice before showing up and just being in the moment, I would have said, that's not going to work. My voice isn't going to blend.
Mm.
It's not going to sound good.
Yeah.
But I think because I was so in the moment with just us jamming and playing that I was just singing.
Right.
Wasn't even thinking about, was this going to work or not? I was just singing.
Yeah. Y'all were just having fun.
We were just having fun.
It was magic.
And it was. And, you know, I can listen back to those recordings now and it's like, wow. Can't really tell you why it works. It just did.
Yeah.
And, you know, my voice is not gravelly. It's not thick. It's not raspy like his. It's not even bluesy, really.
Yeah.
But there was something about it that I don't know if it just put kind of the top end, you know, on his voice.
Yeah. It's just a perfect.
Yeah, and kind of that cutting.
It's
thing.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear you say you wouldn't have thought it would work. I guess I'm just used to hearing it.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
sounds amazing to me.
But to take my voice out and listen to it separate and again, but it's kind of the same thing with like Patty Loveless and Vince Gill.
Mm-hmm.
Their voices don't sound anything at all alike when they sing separately.
Yeah.
But then you put them together and
It's beautiful.
It's this magic things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it was great. And I think I got off topic.
I don't know. We were just talking about the history of the
Yeah.
band. I mean, there's so. I mean, what's cool about it to me too is like there's just been these different eras,
Mm-hmm.
and they've
Sure.
all had their own kind of. I don't know if high watermark is the right word, but there's just interesting parts to all of it. I was listening to the 2015 record. I guess is it called the Muscle Shoals
Muscle Shoals
Recording?
Recordings, yeah.
And there's a song on there that you wrote. It is the River Runs Red.
Yeah.
It's just such a cool song. I like it. There's a lot I like about it, but it's interesting because it's like, oh, is this a murder ballad?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, this is like a
Mass
historical
murder,
moment.
yes.
Yeah,
but-
it is about murder. And then
Yeah.
and then I was like and I was looking up, oh my gosh, the Battle of Stones River. And,
yeah.
and now I'm like, I didn't know it had the highest casualty percentage. And you know, when I've been out that way a few times, and you just, that's the weird thing about living in Nashville is you
drive right by all
forget.
this history. Yeah.
Yeah, you just forget all the stuff that's happened here.
Yeah.
But yeah, how did that come about? How'd you write that?
That's a great story. We had Gary Nichols, our lead singer at that time, who
Yeah.
took Chris's place. Amazing singer,
Yes.
songwriter. From the Shoals.
Mm-hmm.
Still lives there, you know, born and bred. And we just decided, you know, let's go down there and let's do that thing.
Yeah.
Let's just go there and record. There's great studios down there, and let's really let Gary do his thing.
Yeah.
Because he's, in my opinion, equally as soulful as Chris, just a different reiteration of that thing.
Sure.
So we had gone down there, I think it was in October, and recorded a handful of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And came back and knew that we were going to have to go back and do another series of sessions to finish the record. So at that point in time, I felt like we didn't have a big ballad,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and I don't usually like to write this way. I usually just like to write whatever is in the moment for that day.
Yeah.
And I don't even really like to specifically write for the SteelDrivers usually. I just like, if we were to sit down and write, I just like to, let's write the best song we can write.
Totally.
Whoever it's for.
Yeah.
And then figure that out later.
Yeah.
But in this case, I knew that we needed that. And I had a songwriting appointment with two really great friends who were also longtime SteelDriver co-writers. One was Jerry Salley, who wrote a bunch with Chris. He actually, he just won Song of the Year or whatever, something that he'd written with Chris 20 years ago, a song,
wow.
Yeah, so it's really cool to see those relationships still. Chris has great memory, obviously, for songs, and it's a song. That
I know it's
time.
like sometimes you look up like these songs that are on new records, and you're like, oh wow,
it's 20-year-old song.
I think for songwriters is always a good
Gives you
reminder.
Yeah. No, a great song's always a great song.
Yeah.
And then Liz Hingber had also co-written "Hear the Willow Cry" with Chris. They were at Seagale, the same publishing company, for several years. So she was well versed in what the band was all about. So I was writing with them that day, and I was driving to the writing appointment. I did not have an idea, and I hate to show up without an idea.
Yeah.
I just feel like
unprepared.
Yeah, I feel like I don't want to waste anybody's time, and so I was sitting there, and suddenly, and again, words.
Yeah, got a meter
out to me, and words also, just the way they sound together. And these words came to me. I wasn't even thinking of a title at the time.
Yeah. River
Runs Red. And, the alliteration of it. And so I went, I don't know what it means.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it. I just know I like those words together.
Yeah.
And so I walk into the songwriting appointment, and it was just right down here on 17th. And I said, they were asking about the record, because I think we'd already written a couple songs maybe that we were hoping to be on the record.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we really need a ballad.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, let's try to write a ballad today. I'm like, okay. And then I said, I just had this phrase, hit me. I've got this title. And they said, well, what is it? And I said, River Runs Red. And Liz immediately goes, oh, let's make that a murder, drag her down to the river. And I was like, no, we've already got one of those.
Yeah. How do you reinvent the murder ballad
mountain
wheel?
Murder ballad thing? And then Jerry speaks up and he said, well, I just toured the Stones River battlefield a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that sounds like a cool tie-in. And he got, immediately pulled up the laptop and started, like you, sounds
just like
you.
I did, yeah.
I got to know this history. And he pulled up Highest Casualty, all this stuff, and started in 1862, New Year's Eve, and the little songs we play at the end.
Yeah.
That was reported that they played those.
Oh, okay. I was
the
wondering
Home Sweet
about
Home.
that.
Yeah.
Yep,
all that. So that's why we did that, because it was in the reporting of that. So we tried to put as much factual detail as we could, and we finished it. We were going out on the road that weekend, played it for the guys, and Gary immediately said, we've got to do this song.
Wow.
We've got to do it. So we went back when we went back for our last sessions, and it was the last song on the last day.
Wow.
And it became such a perfect closer.
Yeah.
For that record.
Yeah, there's some sort of like magical drug in like I guess it's the bridge. There's something happening quarterly with the melody that I'm like, I need to hear that again.
Yeah. That flat 3 to the 4.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And Gary just, man, he delivered. He just killed that vocal.
Yeah.
So just, oof.
Yeah.
A lot of emotion in that.
And that record won a Grammy, right?
It did.
How was that? What's that like?
The best.
Yeah.
Well, I say that because we had gone out there 2 times before and lost.
Yeah. Yeah, you always say, oh, it's an honor to just be nominated. But
well, it is, but it's way more fun to win. Yeah. No, I'm really, really thankful because, you know, and I've said this many, many times and been quoted many, many times, but it's the truth. At least at that point in time, this was 10 years ago, it really meant something in our world to go from being Grammy nominated to a Grammy winner.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, a lot of venues that maybe wouldn't have been as interested in booking us, suddenly they were very interested. Oh, we've got Grammy winners booked for our concert series this year.
I see.
A lot of PACs, a lot of things like that put us in places that we wouldn't have ordinarily, maybe gotten the opportunity to play. So it was big. It was big for us.
That's amazing. Well, your new record, Outrun, you could see my massive ink blot, so I don't know what my question was. I think it was something along the lines of you had mentioned, maybe in some of the literature that they sent me, that this was like kind of like an ode to Mike, and that you guys called him like the architect of the band.
Yes.
So I was curious, like what's something about Mike that you wish people knew that they probably don't know?
He, we lost him.
Yeah.
He passed in September of 2023, and which was huge blow.
Yeah.
I can look back and he was involved in so many incredible musical moments that I was in.
Yeah.
And both in the Dead Reckoning situation and then with the SteelDrivers, I always joke that, he's was in the 2 best bands I've ever been in. And, just his, if he believed in you, you could conquer the world.
Yeah.
And I feel like that I learned so much from him just by being in these 2 bands with him.
Yeah.
Very, very deep connections there, and just his commitment. And he was very opinionated, but it also made him an unbelievable musician because he was so.
Yeah.
When he committed to something, that note or whatever, that song or it, there was no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And
that's cool.
And I guess I always described him as a walking, talking paradox.
Yeah, why is that?
Because he played amazing blues guitar.
Yeah.
World class. But then he turned around and played mandolin and wanted to play it just like Bill Monroe. And we had to beg him on the second record to include the National.
Really?
Because to him, he was like, that wasn't the deal. And we actually, I don't know if it's credited on that record, we got him to play a little bit of harmonica. And he didn't want to do it. But we were like, Mike, you're so good. This is so cool. Do it.
Yeah.
And there's just, if you listen really, really close, you can hear just a little bit of this harmonica rhythm in a couple tracks. It's amazing.
Wow.
So, just a very strong presence.
Yeah.
And I learned, again, so much from just being around him. And he always upped my game.
Yeah.
My playing.
Mm-hmm.
I learned the very first time he showed up for a Dead Reckoning thing. I hadn't met him yet. And everybody's talking, oh, Hendo. And he comes up, sets his amp down, plugs in, starts playing. And it was like a jet engine going off.
Really?
And I kind of shook my head and thought, I am going to have to up my game so hard or he is going to blow me off the stage. Just literally just blow me off the stage every night.
Yeah.
So it pushed me in every good way.
Yeah, that's so necessary to play sometimes with somebody and go, I got to go practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that can be true for me playing, writing songs.
Oh, his songwriting. I remember writing with him, and we didn't write an incredible amount together. I wish that we had written more. Unfortunately, during a lot of those years, I had a small child, so he didn't like to start writing until about 8 or 9 at night. So it was always, it was just always kind of hard because I would just be like dying by 10:30 and he would just be getting primed and ready to rock. And I'm like, Mike. But he made such an impression because, I'd come out with a line or whatever and he was like, if you wouldn't talk it that way, why would you write it that way?
Mm.
He was such a believer in conversational lyric.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, he really was amazing in that way. And trying to write lyrics that didn't date a song.
Yeah, timelessness.
He was a total master at that.
Wow. That's really cool. Well, you have had quite a career yourself, and the SteelDrivers have had this incredible career. If you could, I always like to ask this question: if you could go back to just getting started on your journey, what kind of advice would you tell yourself?
Oh man, enjoy every second of it, and don't worry. It's all going to be good.
I like that.
It's going to be really good.
Yeah. Sit back and enjoy the ride.
Yeah. I think it's hard when you're young, or at least, and maybe it was me not being confident enough. But I was put in these amazing situations, from a pretty early age, and I was usually the youngest and usually the only girl.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like sometimes I always felt like, whoa, where's my footing here?
Yeah.
But looking back now, I see how lucky I was, but also I wish I had been able to comprehend a little bit better. They wanted me there. I wouldn't have been there had they not. They didn't call me up, because I was cute. They didn't call me up, because I was, the most affordable. All those people wanted me there.
Yeah.
And, if I had been a little bit more understanding, on a deeper level of that, then the, hey, this is all going to be good. Just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Probably would have been
even more.
Even more.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tricky. You get the, I don't know. I just feel like I always have imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then eventually it's like, okay, but it's like the 50th time they've invited me to this co-write. So they probably want me here.
Right.
Yeah, it's probably past the point that they're just doing it
to be nice.
Yeah, to be nice. Or, or whatever. So,
and maybe all of us kind of have a little bit of that, you know, in our personality of, oh, do I deserve to be here? Or, you know.
Well, and I think too, especially in Nashville, you know, there's so much history here. There's so many legends and talented people that are the best to ever do it. And then you're here long enough and all of a sudden you're interacting with these people. Sometimes you're in a band with these people.
Yes.
You're in the co-writing. You're co-writing with these people. You're in the studio and it's like, what?
It's a pinch me moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, a step further, it's like sometimes you got to maybe think like that's you now.
Yeah.
You know? And that's a crazy thought.
It is a crazy thought.
You know?
Yeah. I haven't thought about that. Maybe I will someday.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get to that point. But
I think you're a legend, you know?
I don't know about that.
In the best way.
But, you know, I'm so thankful. Yeah. And I look back and I'm very thankful that I can look back now at these times and these situations and man, I just, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And the younger me would have never, ever envisioned
all this
10% of it. You know, I mean, I don't know that I didn't understand how it all worked or just didn't dream big enough. You know, I was just so into the playing that was, you know, my thing is just always playing, always trying to get better, always, you know, wanting to do. But then to look back and go, wow, I did get to play with Emmylou Harris.
Yeah.
Or I do get to play with Emmylou Harris.
Yeah.
I got to write with Dean Dillon. I mean,
crazy.
John Scott Sherrill, people that are Hall of Famers, you know? And I got to be in a band with Mike Henderson and Chris Stapleton.
Yeah.
You know, and Kevin Welch and all these different people. And I got to be on the road with Reba and
pretty wild.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. This has been delightful.
Very honored and thank you for all the music.
Oh.
And I really appreciate it.
I'm a lucky girl. I mean it, you know. I hate sometimes now for probably your generation and folks that have, you say you've been here 9 years now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That have come recently because I know it's not the same town as when I came.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the opportunities are. You know, I don't know that the path that I was able to take, I don't even know if it really exists like that anymore.
Yeah, I think it's different. And I think part of the reason that I started doing this, you know, I don't even know how long it's been, 2 years now, is because I think we constantly have to be realigning ourselves onto like, what's the thing that matters? And I think it's the people and the songs and the music. And there's all this other stuff that we can get distracted by, that it's the marketing and the being, you got to be signed, you got to be on the radio, all this stuff. But it's like, maybe that's part of it for sure. But if you focus on this part of it, I think, you know, I think it'll be all right.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's going to look like.
Right.
But it's always worked out before.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, each generation, I think, has its, you know, its challenges.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think, again, probably just as you described, if your heart's in the right place and you're making music for the right reasons, you know, hopefully it will prevail.
Yes, it will be all right.
So.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
And that's it. That's the pod.
Woohoo!
See you later.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of 10-Year Town. If you're still listening, you must have liked it. So we hope that you will leave us a rating or review on Apple or Spotify, or give us a subscription on YouTube. It's all free. Don't cost you nothing. But we appreciate you being here, and thank you for supporting the 10-Year Town community. See you next week.